Hello all and welcome back to Broadside. Today is the second part of our two-part video on the battles of Lexington and Concord as they're represented in Assassin's Creed 3. Today we are specifically focusing on the Battle of Concord, which is why we have the Old North Bridge here, which is the site of the battle, the actual site. The bridge, I have a video on that. Not the same bridge, obviously, but roughly the same location and roughly the same looking bridge, if that matters to you. Now, before we get into it, I just want to first establish what we should expect to see in Assassin's Creed 3. So we're going to hear some accounts from people who were actually there. Whether or not they had an axe to grind, we should probably clarify that. So I'll clarify that as we go through. And then I want to walk us through the mission and where it deviates from reality. And boy, does it deviate from reality. So let's get right into it. And yeah, thank you for watching.
Blood's been spilled in Lexington, and there's more to come. The regulars are on the march.
We are going to start with Colonel James Barrett. Now, that name is important to note because the British are at Concord to go to Barrett's farm. Barrett's farm is known by the colonials and regulars alike that as a storage place for arms and munitions. That's why the British are here. So obviously, Colonel James Barrett has an axe to grind. He's a colonel for the militia. He's still an eyewitness, so it's important to listen, hear, just understand that his axe is, I need to make sure that I'm as clear as possible that this is the British instigating a fight and not us. So let's hear from him. Lexington, April 23rd, 1775. I, James Barrett of Concord, colonel of a regiment of militia in the county of Middlesex, do testify and say that on Wednesday morning, last about daybreak, I was informed of the approach of a number of the regular troops to the town of Concord, where was some magazines belonging to this province, when there was assembled some of the militia of this and the neighboring towns, when I ordered them to march to the North Bridge, so called, which they had passed and were taking up. I ordered said militia to march to said bridge and pass the same, but not to fire on the king's troops unless they were first fired upon. We advanced near said bridge, when the said troops fired upon our militia and killed 2 men dead on the spot and wounded several others, which was the first firing of guns in the town of Concord. My detachment then returned the fire, which killed and wounded several of the king's troops. James Barrett. Now, James Barrett clearly has an axe to grind in this aspect, so let's move on to another eyewitness. Lexington, April 23rd, 1775. We, Bradbury Robinson, Samuel Spring, Thaddeus Bancroft, all of Concord, and James Adams of Lexington, all in the county of Middlesex, all of lawful age, do testify and say that on Wednesday morning, last near 10 of the clock, we saw near 100 of regular troops being in the town of Concord, at the North Bridge, in said town, so called, and having passed the same they were taking up said bridge, when about 300 of our militia were advancing towards said bridge. In order to pass said bridge, when, without saying anything to us, they discharged a number of guns on us, which killed 2 men dead on the spot and wounded several others. When we returned the fire on them, which killed 2 of them and wounded several, which was the beginning of hostilities in the town of Concord. Bradbury Robinson, Samuel Spring, Thaddeus Bancroft, James Adams. Now let's hear from the other side. This is testimony of Edward Thornton Gold about the Battle of Lexington and the Battle of Concord. Now I'm going to move on to the section where he begins his conversation on Concord, but I will attach links to these quotes to make sure that I'm not taking them out of context and that you can read them yourselves. We drew up on the Concord side of the bridge. The provincials came down upon us, upon which we engaged and gave them first fire. This was the first engagement after the one at Lexington. A continued firing from both parties lasted throughout the whole day. I myself was wounded at the bridge. I am now treated with the greatest humanity and taken all possible care of by the provincials of Medford. Now let's hear from someone who is a little bit further away from the conflict, not necessarily a soldier who participated in it, just to get a better understanding of what actually happened from an eyewitness with less of an axe to grind. I, Timothy Minot Jr. of Concord, on the 19th day of this instant April, after that I had heard of the regular troops firing upon Lexington men, and fearing that hostilities might be committed at Concord, thought in my incumbent duty to secure my family. After I had secured my family, some time after that returning towards my own dwelling, and finding that the bridge on the northern part of said Concord were guarded by regular troops, being a spectator of what had happened at said bridge, declare that the regular troops stationed on bridge, after they saw the men that were collected on the westerly of said bridge, marched towards said bridge, then the troops returned towards the easterly side of said bridge, and formed themselves, as I thought, for regular fight. After that, they fired one gun, then two or three more, before the men that were stationed on the westerly part of said bridge fired upon them. Timothy Minot, Jr. And now let's get a better idea of what happened um, with regard to casualties by hearing the testimony of Zachariah Brown and Thomas Davis, Jr. about the Battle of Concord. Concord, May 11th, 1775. We, the subscribers of lawful age, testify and say that we buried the dead bodies of the King's troops that were killed at the North Bridge in Concord on the 19th day of April, 1775, where the action first began, and that neither of those persons were scalped, nor their ears cut off, as has been represented. Zachariah Brown, Thomas Davis, Jr. So what are we getting here for an image, a representation for what the battle should look like? First, the colonial militia retreat across the North Bridge. Second, the British regulars arrive in town and proceed to the North Bridge. Third, part of that regular group marches to Barrett's farm while the other guard the bridge. Fourth, while that one group is at Barrett's farm, the colonial militia see smoke from the town and they approach the bridge that is being guarded by the remainder of the regulars. 5. These British regulars retreat across the bridge, even attempt to damage it, and then fire into the approaching militia. 6. Gunfire is exchanged between these two groups. And 7. The losses here are minimal in comparison to battles later on in this conflict. A lot of men and boys are injured on this day, but that doesn't really happen in Concord. We heard those two gentlemen mention both bodies that they buried. Both, meaning two. So the casualty list for both sides is minimal at Concord. We're going to now jump into Assassin's Creed 3. I will let play the introduction section, and then we'll discuss the figures that we're talking to and whether or not they were there and if they're accurately represented. And then we'll get into the mission and we'll talk about where Ubisoft goes right and wow, where did they go wrong?
Go home, or you get yourself killed. Enough to worry about without some green boy looking to play it hero. I can vouch for him.
John Parker as well.
When the fighting starts, we'll need to hold those positions there. They're critical to the defense of Concord. Good boys. Not used to soldiering, they need some with the experience to direct them. That's something you can do. You'd best be telling the truth.
You have my word.
Then I suppose all that's left to do is wait.
We hear some troubling things already from Colonel James Barrett on this day. Specifically, he says that we're going to have to hold this position. And then he looks at the North Bridge, which is being fortified. That, as we've heard, isn't reality, does not match up with what actually happened on the day. And so I'm already worried before we've before we've started to play. That's another thing. He mentions that this is important for the defense of Concord. Concord is on the other side of the bridge. It's an interesting approach to hold Concord, defend Concord by not being in it. You've already pulled out of the city, the town, so you're not holding anything. You're holding a pathway that leads to other towns. That could be an excuse. James Barrett here does not really align with historical James Barrett because he's spouting a little bit of nonsense.
Sir! Mount the barricades! No! Ensure my men hold those positions. If the Red Devils break through, we're finished.
What would you have me do?
Listen carefully. The Redcoats will form firing lines. Order the men to shoot just before the line is ready. Too soon and they'll miss their targets. Too late, and the enemy will open fire first.
Understood.
And if any of those bastards make it through, engage them. You must keep my men alive.
Okay, wow, that was a lot of information. Basically, Assassin's Creed 3 is telling us that we are going to have to go to 3 separate militia forces and order them to fire at the correct time to kill the British. And I keep saying British, I mean the regular troops of the British Army. So let's see how Connor deals with this. Again, not even close to reality. Close, I guess, in that there were militia forces, there were British regular forces. They did clash, that's right, and what did happen at Northbridge, but let's see. Here's a group of British regulars coming up and over the bridge. Again, didn't happen. I'm trying to make that clear. Didn't happen like this. The regulars would have already come over and would be working their way back. What's also important to note here is that the British haven't fired first here. Notably, at the Battle of Concord, we have multiple reports that the British fired first here. And in this one, it is the militia pouring it into them, boys. Just absolutely unloading on this small group of British regular troops. So that was 8 British casualties of 130 that need to occur. So when we talk about the Battle of Lexington and Concord and the battles that basically follow, we're looking at a casualty around 300 for the British troops. That's, in the 70s for killed, 174 wounded, and then the difference being missing troops. The number that we're supposed to reach be 130, specifically at this battle, that's crazy. Like very far away from reality when it comes to the Battle of Concord. So from what I have looked up and read, the British casualty figure for the North Bridge specifically is around 12. 3 killed, 9 wounded. So we're at 8. And I'll be honest, they don't look wounded to me. They look dead. So how long into this mission are we going to exceed that casualty rate? There we go. We have now exceeded the casualties that occurred actually at the Battle of Concord. We don't have to get too much more into it. I've already explained what is wrong here in Assassin's Creed 3. They do a pretty good job with the Battle of Lexington, but the Battle of Concord is kind of notorious for being just really far off from reality. And of course, we'll always have the debate on this channel. Does that matter? Does it really matter that the casualty rate is wrong, that the overall casualties are wrong, and that the movements are wrong? In this case, I really think it does. There are ways to make the Battle of Concord engaging. It certainly was engaging for the men and boys who fought in it. So your reasons for changing reality, I think, are weak. And I think, again, a lot of people experience history in different ways. This is one of them, through video games. And I think it's important that they get certain things right. In particular, it's important to notify users who is firing first, what the rough actual events are, and then how many people put their lives on the line and unfortunately did not come home that day. I think those are things that are important to get right, and I think this mission does a really poor job of doing that. That being said, on the bright side, they did accurately portray the people who were there. James Barrett, of course, his farm being the reason why the British regulars are there. You have John Parker at Lexington. You have William Dawes, who certainly was involved in the lead up to these events. And you have colonial militia at the North Bridge, which is, just outside of Concord. So, and you have John Pickard, who, again, was at the battle. So they did certain things correct. The everyone being in the same uniform, I think, is absolutely wild, but not super important at this time to portray correctly. But yeah, I would say overall, when we talk about the Battle of Concord, not I would say don't base your history essay on Assassin's Creed 3's representation of it. Don't think you ever would, but yeah, I would say stay away from this one as a historical account. So thank you all for watching. I really appreciate if you leave a like if you like the video, and if you subscribe for more future content. Publish as regularly as I can. I recently have a child, so makes creating videos a little bit less of a priority. But thank you so much for watching, and yeah, we'll catch you next time.